would love for you guys to welcome Anita Washington to the stage. I'd like to tell you a little bit about her first before she gets up and presents on podcasting. She is an author, an MBA candidate. She's also has her own TV show and her own podcast, and she did this all herself, guys. She's also written a book, from scratch, and the title of her presentation at the Women's Expo was "Turn Your Baggage to Bank." So what I love about Anita, obviously she's tough as nails, but she's also sweet as sugar. Like, that's a hard thing to do, if you ask me. You have to be tough as nails to come out with such a positive attitude and so much good energy and so much business acumen. It's amazing. She came all the way from Washington, D.C. to share her expertise with us. So with that said, I want you guys to give a very warm welcome to Anita Washington. Thank you so much for coming. We're so glad you're here.
I don't know who that is. Karen just described to you. I'm just a little country girl from Carolina. Which one? South. Which one? Here to share with you the basics of how I got started to get known. Because, oops. I turned around looking for slides and realized they hadn't been set up. But Jacksonville, you all have a lot of heart-centered businesses in this room. Jacksonville is a very warm city. You guys care about a lot about each other very much, and it shows in this room. It showed at the expo in March. She said that my presentation was standing room only, and it was, but it was from the experts that put the marketing together to host the expo, but then everybody has been through something. Everybody has a life that they want to help somebody transition through, help them transition from one career to another. We all want to make each other feel better. I find that very, very interesting that in 2019, we have so much going on, politics, religion. The world is becoming a smaller place that all we want to do is help each other. Because I tell you, I watched that 90 Day Fiancé. I don't understand how they completely pack up their lives. Now, coming from another country here, America has always had that tagline of being the best place on the globe. But now they're starting to pack up and leave the U.S. to go to South Africa and India, and I wish them well. I want to help, but that's just a little bit out of my, yes, very much so. So in going through podcasting today, tell me, what is one thing that you want to make sure you get before you leave this workshop today? Anybody?
How to write show notes.
Show notes, okay.
She's so practical.
Okay.
I want to increase my audience. I want my message to get out there to people.
Okay, do you have a podcast?
Yes.
Really?
Thanks to my expo and my great speakers that got me going.
What you got?
How to let people know you have a podcast.
The marketing piece. Got something?
Nope.
Come on.
I need to get started.
Yeah. Anybody else? Got one thing they want to make sure they get before? Nobody?
What are the benefits of podcast versus video?
Audio versus video. You know that in podcasting now, they're starting to release videos on the podcasting platforms, right? Yeah. Yes. So, for instance, yes. Look at Kim's face. For instance, a big name, Joel Osteen. Yeah. You can not only listen, like if you go to iTunes, you can not only listen and have the audio, but he also releases the video. And you know, what starts at the top filters down, we all eventually do the same thing for our marketing, right? You go ahead and get started.
What about the technical requirements for podcasting?
Technical requirements. Does everybody here know the technical requirements? You will before we leave? We will before we leave here today. Okay.
One quickie, just to know, I've had a website out there for 3 years that's not been finished, so having the workshop, getting the podcast on there and out, just getting over that fear hump of technology and getting it done, have the first podcast out there is a great step forward to
yes.
more.
Yes, getting started. That's the one thing that I'm getting started. Because everybody wants to, being business owners, we want to be seen, we want to be heard, we got to be found. We all have great messages, but how do we move it from just our, from our home or from our laptop out into the world to be seen? When I first started to get out into the entrepreneurial space, all of my friends knew exactly what they wanted to do. One was a makeup artist, another one was going into skincare. Everybody knew, except for me, I had no idea. So the one thing that I did was I began to create content to help them. And putting that content out there, I had to move out of my comfort zone. In doing that, I also had to move out of some other people's comfort zone. Because as you can tell, like I said, I'm just a little country girl from Carolina. And as long as that little girl stayed on that porch, her friends and family were fine with that. She wasn't supposed to speak out, especially being, I'm sure, being Southern women, you all are very aware of, we are to, children, one thing, are to be seen and not heard. Women are to be prim and proper. They are not to be strong. They are not to be business owners. They are not to speak out. However, you have to learn how to ditch that comfort zone. It may have been well for the foundation. It may have been well for teaching, for you to get to be a nice person, to be humble. But now that you want to be an entrepreneur, now that you're walking in a business owner space, your voice has to be heard. And to be heard, you have to speak out. So when other people around you, because this woman in this picture, it's my mom. It's my kindergarten graduation. And like I said, as long as I stayed on that porch, as I got older, not just physically, but mentally, as long as I stayed in that place, everything was fine. I began to hear things. I began to hear things like, who do you think you are? You can't do that. Or you're not smart enough. You could never get an MBA. You're not smart enough. You cannot buy a house. You're too young. All of those pressures from the people in my circles, whom I actually thought were going to have my back and push me forward, proved otherwise. So there was a choice came down to that I had to make. Was I going to stay within their, obviously what was in their comfort zone, because I was breaking and crying to get out of it? Or was I going to move on? And I'm not sure with the lighting you can see, but if you can see this one little lady here, her name was Sister David. And I had her kindergarten through 4th grade. Actually, they tried to change my class 2nd grade, but you know, if you cut up a little bit, you can get put back in the same class. So I had Sister David K through 4, and Sister David instilled in me that I could be whatever I wanted. She instilled in me that I was beautiful, that I was articulate, that I deserved to be seen and heard, despite what I said once I opened my mouth. Because, you know, children can say some really fascinating things sometimes, especially Southern children, because if you're repeating what you get from Granny, you're not showing how it comes out, right? But she instilled in me, and that lamp, that light, grew with me as I grew. So, as I began to interview those friends of mine that I talked about, this was my first studio. This is a corner of my living room. I went to Joann's and bought some fabric, put it on the wall. I went to Home Depot and got the painter's tape so that it wouldn't mess up the wall. And this is just a lighting set off of Amazon that was about 60 bucks. And I got started. This is the first studio. Why podcasting? What are the benefits of podcasting? For one, podcasting is hot right now. Everybody is either listening. You see people at the gym. Everybody wants to look cool because, you know, remember when we would all be in groups and one person had that iPad. It was like, ooh, what do they have? Right? Now that's what podcasting is. At the gym, they're on a treadmill, they're listening. In their cars, we're not so much listening to music anymore. It's podcasting, because everybody wants to have more time, more money, feel better, more time with family. And the way to do that is they're learning from others, and those others are now you. Podcasts go with your customers everywhere. They allow you to have a competitive edge, because what you do during that podcast is you position your expertise. If I'm constantly listening, what's your business?
I work for Merrill Lynch, financial advisor.
If I'm constantly listening to, your name?
Betsy.
Betsy, okay, coming out of my iTunes telling me financial advice, when I am ready, when I feel like I've got a little bit of money for somebody else to show me how to manage, I'm not just treading water or getting through the budgeting phase, who is it that I'm going to trust with that decision? The one person that I have been listening to give me that expertise for the past 3 to 6 months. There's one story that I hear over and over about a young man that moved to the DC area. As you know, DC is a very political town. It's very crowded. We have everything. We have probably 100 of everything. But the one thing that he was a chiropractor. And he began to network and go to various events trying to start his business. And they were saying, oh, we have, 40 chiropractors in this neighborhood. We don't need any more. We don't need any more chiropractors. So he came up with a competitive edge. Back then, podcasting was not hot. But his competitive edge was to go to each person, knocked on doors, ring doorbells, one by one, asking people, hey, if you had a personal chiropractor, if you had back pain, where would you want that chiropractor to be located? What would you want that chiropractor to teach you? He began to have that personal touch. He knew their names. When he saw them at the post office or the grocery store, he actually spoke to them and spoke to them by name. Personal touch. He began to send them a newsletter. So once a month, they got information on the proper care for their spine, for their back, whether it was how you sit at work or how you sit at your chair when you're working with your computer. So when they were in a car accident and needed a chiropractor, who did they go to? When he finally opened his business, his first month, he netted $50,000 in sales. Now, that's what Karen was talking about when she said it's a part of your strategy. It's a part of your funnel. He put that funnel together, one with the one-on-one touch, then with the newsletter, which in this case for you would be podcasting, so that when the time came and they needed that service, he was top of mind. The way that our customers make decisions these days is changing. And we have to now go where they are. It isn't so much the TV commercials, because there's podcasting, there's audio. And television is learning the hard way that we're not watching traditional television anymore. CBS didn't see Netflix coming. Right. So we have to remain relevant and go where the customer is. One of those is podcasting. In considering your podcasting, here comes the nuts and the bolts. In considering your podcasting, you want to consider format, frequency, and mode. These are one of your top 3 decisions. Format. What type of podcast are you doing? Is it interviewing? Is it just you talking, giving out information? Is it a combination of both? Frequency. Is it going to be weekly? Every 2 weeks? Once a month? And I got to tell you, they say content is king, but consistency is queen. People need to see you constantly. There are some people that said that, oh, Steve Harvey, you're overexposed. People don't want to see you anymore. Yet, this man had 7 television shows. It didn't matter what your genre was or what you like watching. Somewhere in your television watching was Steve Harvey. Game show, talk show, game programs. What was it? Thunderdome, his talk show. Then he had the radio program. And they're looking at his life saying that now, he's being released. But if you look at the new crowd that he hangs out with, he's gone from being an improv comedian working the circuit to actually now working with Grant Cardone. And I mean, he's really stepping up. So when you look at the changes that are being made in your life, remember, when you move from one circle to another, it isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you're stepping up. Mode, how are you going to record it? When Karen mentioned the equipment, the technicals of it, don't get lost in that. It's really, really easy where you can, say you do a live stream on a Facebook Live. You can then download that Facebook Live video, snatch the audio from it, and upload it as a podcast to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Blog Talk Radio. It's about repurposing content. There's another way to record it, and where I have a friend, she does her podcast with freeconferencecall.com. She tells her guests, they agree on a time, they both call in, it records it, she sends it to an editor who then cleans up some of the pops and the coughs and the sneezes, and then she releases that into those same platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Next one. This is where people tend to get a little bit stuck. Oh, I don't know what to call it. Pick something and move on, because you can always change it. The same way you make transitions in life, child, teenager, young adult, senior, it's the same way your business concentration is going to change. You may change that title. I was a part of the Women's Expo, but now for some reason, they feel as if the name has to be, has to be a little something different. But it's, but it's fluid and flexible. That's a part of winning the game. Fluid and flexible, because people's attention spans are so short these days. You have to remain catchy. You have to remain in that space that is going to capture their attention. So where Women's Expo worked in March, come September, it's a fresh new branding, a fresh new name. People are going to come back, see a whole set of different speakers, and not even realize that it's being put on by the same group. Next. Now, with your length, it's up to you. You can do a podcast once a day for 10 minutes. You can do it once a week for 30 minutes. How you mix and match is totally up to you. What is the best way to get your information out there? With podcasts, right now, statistics tell us that information, people's attention span and information with podcasts go from either 15 minutes, depending on what you're talking about, to 45 minutes. If it's over 45 minutes, you're going to lose them, because they're multitasking. They're listening to your podcast and doing other things. And most of the tasks that we complete today are complete within an hour. So the easiest way to get your podcast done, I've broken it down into just 3 simple steps. Record, edit, distribute. Okay? Record your MP3 file. MP3 is audio. MP4 is video. Record your MP3 file. Then you want to edit it to make sure you've gotten all of the pop sounds, like the P's that you hit really hard. If there's any coughing, if there's any sneezes, all of those can be pulled out with proper editing. However, if you are doing the editing yourself, don't worry about it. The best thing is to get it done, because procrastination is perfection, and procrastination will keep you permanently in the same place. And what you want to do is move forward. Remember that picture of my first studio? Just get it done. Any questions so far? Next. Okay. Equipment. The Zoom conferencing, everybody is aware of Zoom conferencing, yes? Okay, you're aware of Zoom. Freeconferencecall.com, yes? Yes. Okay. Skype? Yes. Facebook Live? Yes. Are we doing Facebook Lives? Yes. Okay. Is there anybody in here that hasn't heard of any of those? Now is the time, because this is a beginner class, so ask the question.
I haven't heard of Zoom video conferencing.
Okay. Okay, Zoom video conferencing is a website that hosts live streaming for you. You can sign up for it. There's a free account, and then there are accounts that are minimal cost. But what happens is you send somebody a link, you both log in at the same time, and it will either you can choose whether it's split screen, how you look at it, but a lot of people use it right now for, say, online courses. From there also, you can choose whether you record the video and audio or just the audio. So it's zoom.com.
Question about that.
Huh?
If you were just speaking, not interviewing, could you still use Zoom, or do you have to have somebody else on there with you?
You don't have to,
Okay.
but I'm not quite sure because it's primarily a video platform. If
Okay.
you wanted to just record it,
You might as well do videos.
right.
Okay.
But if you want to do just the audio, why wouldn't you use, say, the voice recorder on your phone?
Gotcha. Okay.
Lot simpler, right? Because what you want to do is get started. You want any of the tech in your way. You want to get started. Any other questions? Okay. Recording your audio. Select the mode, what we just talked about, and all the different ways that you can. How are you going to record it? Prepare your equipment and your environment. When you prepare your equipment, if you're interviewing somebody, you want to make sure you can hear them, they can hear you. You want to make sure that if you're using your laptop to record, because a lot of our laptops these days come equipped with sound recorders, that your mic on your laptop is recording, that the software is recording to the right mic. Because if you use headphones and it's recording from the mic that's on your laptop, it's going to pick up all of the sound that's around you also. So if you plug your headphones in, make sure that it chooses that mic and that you're hearing that audio. Your environment, you may want to make sure that maybe the kids are taking a nap or they're out with their favorite auntie. The dog is put away so that barking, because you don't want to make your editing a nightmare. Trust me. In editing, you want to keep that job as easy as possible. Make sure that your guests are also aware and ask them to make sure that their environments are quiet. Make sure that when you and your guests agree on an interview time, or if you're co-hosting, make sure that you all agree on the same time per time zone. Because that could be a very big problem. You say 2 o'clock, and they show up 2 o'clock Central, and you show up 2 o'clock Eastern. Things like that to be aware of. Outlining each episode, and where you're talking about, because when you do your podcast, you have to have a general podcast description that gives people an idea of what kind of content you're going to offer. Then for each episode, you also want a show description. And this is what April was talking about when she said show notes. Some people, when they do show notes, they make it very specific, as in you'll see notes that say minute 2:36, we discuss equipment. Minute 5:10, we discuss marketing. Other people, and if you look at any of my show notes, I give a general description of what is discussed in the episode and maybe give an open-ended question about the biggest problem that the guest answered. Like, for instance, one of my guests, I interviewed the ex-wife of the DC sniper. And I didn't interview her from the standpoint of the marriage or how did you feel when all of this was going on. I interviewed her from the standpoint of she had 3 kids who were minors at the time. Were like 10, 12, and 15. How is it that you normalized life again once he got caught? What were the techniques that you used? Because you got 3 children who only knew him as dad, but you got a world that sees him as a monster. How did you normalize life again? Because when we go through things, that's the one thing that other people that were listening to it would have in common. When you go through something, whether it's domestic violence, rape, hurricane, whatever it is, the one thing you want to know is, okay, now that everything has come to a stop, what do I do next? So that's the question. And then you want to keep show notes to a paragraph. So maybe somewhere between 5 and 10 sentences.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm like a big podcast binger. I don't even listen to the radio anymore, and Netflix is over. It's all about podcasts. So I see show notes, and I see the very type A, which I
Right.
admire and will never do.
Okay.
Like minutes and all that. But then I see some that just describe that episode, but then there's some that describe the episode and then also talk about, some of them are way too long, but then they talk about the podcaster and who they are, like, you know, like Kim and I run a podcast, so it would be like, talk about that person, then all of our stuff. And I mean, is that too, like, we don't need to tell about ourselves every time, do we?
Every time, no, but the reason that the people are doing that, it's a marketing tactic, and where they're trying to get maybe speaking gigs, or they're trying to go overboard with positioning themselves as an expert. You can maybe put it in the general description of the podcast itself, and then in each episode, maybe you can give a link to the additional information.
I like that better.
Because,
It's overkill.
right.
Self-promoting.
She's
I
so
don't-
vain that sometimes I struggle.
I insist that she put all my information.
Your entire 20-line bio in all of the show notes. I get it. I so get it. Keywords. Keywords are going to be how people find your podcast. When you put together each episode, when you put together your podcast as a whole, you want to pull out keywords. What are the hot terms in your industry right now? What are the pain points that people are looking for?
No more turkey neck.
If somebody's going, whatever they're typing into Google, whatever they're typing into Amazon, those are the words that you want to use for keywords, so that when they type it into iTunes or Stitcher, your podcast comes up. The other thing is, when you put your graphic artwork together, here's another place where people get stuck. Don't get stuck here. Anybody here know what a pixel is? 3,000 by 3,000, 1,400 by 1,400. That's what you want the size of your thumbnail to be. But when you think about the design of your thumbnail, design something that is going to be scroll worthy. Know what I mean by scroll worthy? Okay, take out your cell phone. Pull up your podcast app, whatever it is, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is.
Download Stitcher if you don't have it.
Just podcast app.
Okay? And then, what's your favorite word?
Obnoxious.
Type that in.
Professionally obnoxious.
Type that in.
That would be our amazing podcast.
Just type in generally obnoxious and scroll.
The word generally, or just obnoxious?
Just obnoxious. Yeah, just obnoxious. How am I doing time? Okay.
Are you going to come up when we put that in?
Is it kind of slow?
Yes.
How many other?
Okay. Take that out. And just put in the word talk.
Or whatever word you want.
I did real estate.
There you go. You go, Wendy. Well,
Let me see your results, Wendy.
she did real estate.
Yeah. Now, scroll down. And which one just looking at the thumbnail, what captures your attention?
I like that green one.
Okay.
I thought some of these have so many words that it took me too long to read them.
Okay. These are notes that you want to take, so that when you design your own thumbnail,
You don't do that.
right,
I love that.
right.
There's a really simple coffee mug one, but I don't know what it's about.
So there
Okay.
you go. You're not going to do that.
What you got?
I think if there's a face, I kind of tend to look at that one more.
All right. The face, she said, captures her attention more.
And same with the wordiness of it. I guess getting the wording.
Too many words is distracting. She scrolls right past it. That's what I mean by scroll worthy.
See, that's why we're so cool. Look at our picture.
Double check connections next. Editing. Don't cringe if you feel as if, oh, there's something else to learn. Because in editing, a lot of people use Audacity, some people use GarageBand. There's 2 freelancer websites, okay? One is Fiverr.com. Does everybody know Fiverr? Okay, and the other one is FreeUp.com. FreeUp has 3 E's. FreeEup.com. and you can search in there, find qualified podcast editors for a reasonable price that will edit that audio file for you until you can learn how to do it yourself. But when the file is editing or when they ask you questions, you may want to consider whether you want to start with a jingle and have a jingle in front of your audio file before you start talking. Kind of like the TV show themes that would come on beforehand. You listen to podcasts, you're familiar, you know a lot of those. And the same thing for the outro. When you do your outro over that same music for the jingle, you may want to give your social media handles, make sure you follow us. Hey, if you really like this episode, drop us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think, what's your feedback. Let us know if there's any other content you'd like to see, any questions you'd like us to ask. An open-ended question to try and keep them engaged with your podcast. You also may want to add, this is a weekly podcast. Make sure you catch us next week. We'll be back with this information. Something, a cliffhanger, a call to action of some kind to keep them involved. Also in the outro idea, some folks add the link to get them onto their list. This is the funnel that Karen was talking about earlier. Hey, I've got a free ebook, I've got a free newsletter with information on how to properly care for your spine, how to properly care for your skin. Make sure you go to ... and download that free piece of information.
Can you tell them how they can make a ebook short or as long as they want so they're not like intimidated to create a free download?
An ebook?
Yeah.
An ebook can be an article. Really, the gatekeepers are gone. Once upon a time, we all had, first you had to go through the daunting task of putting together a book proposal before you even wrote the book. Then you had to find a company, a publisher, to be interested in your proposal enough to consider helping you publish your book. And those gatekeepers, those major publishers, were sticklers with who they allowed in the gate. But now the gatekeepers are gone. If you download ebooks from Amazon and you haven't noticed, because sometimes, I really have to check myself, right? I download an ebook from somebody's website and it's 3 pages. This is not a book. And I have to think about it, Nita, all you gave up was an email address. You didn't pay $25 for this ebook. An ebook can be an article. People love checklists. You put a you put a free checklist on your website and offer it to people. Then once you get them onto your list, the funnel again, that keeps them, you can then begin to email them your updates. Hey, check out our podcast this week. This week we're talking about A, B, and C, and even drop the link in it. People on my list, every Sunday, they get an email about who I interviewed that week, what video dropped. It's also in podcast version. I put both links in the email. So whichever way they choose, if they want to watch the video, they can go to my YouTube channel. If they want to listen to the podcast, it's there. They can click the iTunes link, the Stitcher link, or the Google Play link. It's all right there in the email. Okay, let's talk about meta tags real quick. Meta tags they are actually added to the audio file. You know when you're listening to your radio and are serious and it scrolls across and tells you who it is and how long it is and what the name of the podcast or the song is? Those are meta tags. Like I said, the gatekeepers are gone. Those can be added to your file so that whether somebody is searching online on Google or they're searching in one of those platforms, those keywords, again, those meta tags, will help your file come to the top. That's something when you pick an editor, you want to make sure you tell your editor, hey, I want to make sure that I have meta tags in my file. This is the title, this is the link, this is the title of the podcast, this is the title of the episode, this is the episode number. These are the keywords for this episode. All of those are meta tags that can be added to your audio file. Next. We talked about some of the distributors. Time? Go again? Okay, I'm good. A platform, okay? Let's talk about a platform versus a directory so that when I go through the list later, I won't lose you. The platform, Buzzsprout, iTunes, Stitcher, okay? Those are all called directories. So when you prepare your files, you want to upload them, they're giving you directions, that's the directory, okay? To distribute it, you need a host. That host platform can be Libsyn, can be Blueberry, but it's Blubrry. Could be Buzzsprout, could be Blog Talk Radio. Okay, so we got the difference there between a directory and a platform.
Is there one better than the other? Like what's the differences? Cost?
Cost,
Okay.
the size of the file that you can host based on the cost. If you're going, how often you're going to upload, like whatever your frequency is, because if they give you, let's say, 15 megabytes a month, and you're going to produce an episode a week that come to a total of 25, that gives you some parameters for when you compare one to another, what your requirements are. Okay? My podcast is, I use Libsyn for storage, but then I also use Blueberry. For me, personally, I like Blueberry. Their software is just a little bit slicker, and their customer service, though he's cantankerous, he's very knowledgeable. So if you've ever dealt with like a cranky old grandpa, you can get the information, but you got to hang in there, and they respond, right? I don't have a lot of time. Trying to get my business up and running and all the different marketing platforms and everything that has to be done and still working my full-time job, when I have a question, I need an answer, right? He responds. Libsyn, though they have customer service, personally, I haven't had a lot of good interaction with them. It's more of a call center. And for a beginner, and plus with Blueberry, the first 30 days, you get dial-in service. So get your episodes together. You want at least 3 to launch at one time because you want to hook people. That first episode can kind of be you answering 4 or 5 questions about what your podcast is going to be about. And then your next 2 episodes will be full episodes of your podcast. The best way to grow your audience for your podcast is to start being on other podcasts. That's where the listener is. And then you want to choose people who are perpendicular to your genre. Like, for instance, when I see, who's the Starbucks guy? Who's the guy that owns Starbucks? Okay. When I see him and Oprah at a business meeting, I'm like, what? She's media, he's coffee. What do they have in common? What are they sitting down talking about? Right, but it's sponsorships, it's commercials, it's events that she holds that he can come set up a booth and test out new coffee for you coffee drinkers, flavors. That's the word I'm looking for, flavors. So it doesn't always have to be perpendicular, where it's somebody who's doing the exact same thing that you're doing. It can be a perpendicular partner, and where you all meet at that one touch. You can describe to them what that meeting is, because a lot of them, they may be in that parallel mindset, and you have to reach out to educate them just a little bit to get them to merge with you, collaborate. And when you look at people that have bigger platforms than you, just offer to do the marketing and the upfront work. And make sure you give them your aggregate numbers. For instance, let's say you might have 200 on Instagram, 400 on Twitter, and 100 on Facebook. don't break it down. Like when your first tricks of the game. In your first beginning, don't break it down. Give them the aggregate number and say social media. Okay? You don't necessarily have to give them your conversion number. Hey, I've got a list. I've got 200 on a list. You can give them your number of impressions. Because right now, most of the decision makers don't have the expertise. They don't know what question to ask. I look at the decision makers where I work every day. And a company came in, did a really snazzy video and says, hey, we can do a video for your HR department, put it on your website, and it will explain your benefits to all of your employees. Sounded really nice. The company did the video, they put it on the website, and it says, this page has 30,000 impressions. So that means your employees have looked at it at least twice. I didn't say anything, not hating on anybody else's game. But just because the page loaded doesn't mean the video started. You see what I'm saying? So it's all about the terminology that you use to get in the door, build business, and then climb. Yes, ma'am.
Do you mind if I share a resource about getting in the door with certain people? So there's a website called hunter.io, and hunter.io is a website where you can kind of register for these kind of like big places like Essence Magazine, or if there's some different, veins that you want to get in, you can get the emails and contact information from that website to try to maybe pitch or see, like you said, kind of get in the door past the decision maker.
Another one is help a reporter out.
Yes.
Yeah. Help a reporter out.
H-A-R-O, Haro. I landed somebody an interview with NBC with that resource.
H-A-R-O, help a reporter out. They'll send you emails 3 times a day of opportunities, and you have to go through the opportunities, read the descriptions, and then make the determination as to whether or not you want to try and pitch. Yes, ma'am.
Starting out, if you pick a name for your podcast, like Granny says, do I register that with the state that I'm in? Do I protect it in some way before I go out to the podcast and save it?
That's it. Here again, that's from the standpoint that when the gatekeepers were very active, because if you trademark Granny Says, and then 6 weeks from now you want to change it to something else, you spent a lot of money to protect that. Today, you become your brand. So your tagline today could be Granny Says, but people will get to know you by your name. For instance, I was introduced to April as the money coach, right? But she's so much more. That now, for me, has taken a back seat. And I know April Caldwell. So it's like, oh yeah, she does money coaching too. Right? So your name will become like Mel Robbins. Does anybody here who know who Mel Robbins is? Right? You like, when you first got to know her, what was she doing?
Checking in people.
No, Mel Robbins.
Mel
What
Robbins?
had she reached the journalist stage yet, or would she, because
Saw her on stage.
Yeah.
speaker,
Yes.
all right? Okay, in September she becomes talk show host,
Right.
all right? My television show right now is called That's Anita Live. Catchy for the local, everybody, good conversation starter. People wanted to know what was the story behind the name. As it grows, I didn't trademark that name because I'm sure that as I grow, right, people will get to know, one, they'll get to know Anita Washington, but then two, the name of it will change because I'm going to need some help.
But you don't have to register it as a fictitious name for your business, in other words. No?
You don't have to. It depends on how much do you want to protect that? Like how much do you plan to use that?
Yeah, and it's worth the effort and the money.
Right.
Whatever. Yeah. You're
Because,
still you.
right.
You're gonna be able to steal you.
Because people will be like, that's not the real Granny. Where is the real Granny?
Yeah, exactly.
And then they'll begin to look for you by name. So it's, do you want to put that much money and time and investing protecting that?
You're not gonna be able to steal who you are in your essence.
All right. Okay, so here Here is the overview sequence of putting a podcast together and then getting it distributed out. Oh, 1 second. And marketing also and getting it out to people. The quickest way, of course, is to be on other podcasts because that's where podcasters are. But also, I go to the big podcasting conferences, right, to hang out with them to see what are they doing with their marketing. They build entire brands around their podcasts. The podcast itself has its own website. When people type it in, they do SEO so that when people type in the name of it, it comes up first on Google. It's how far and how deep you want to go with getting your podcast out there. And then also decide, where do you want to become known first? Are you trying to become known? Because, for instance, real estate, that's a very localized because you're licensed by state. All right, and yes, referrals can come from other areas, but where do you want to put that concentration? You can put it on t-shirts. Every time I travel, if I go to the grocery store, I'm in a t-shirt that says "That Anita Live." On the back it says, it either says healer or it says catch me on YouTube. So the next time somebody's on YouTube scrolling, hey, they don't have anything else to look for, perhaps they will remember to type those 3 words in. Okay. Here's the overview sequence. 1, of course, the decision to get started, your format, your frequency, your title. Get an idea of recording your first 3 episodes. Does everybody right now have an idea of how they're going to record it? Whether you're going to do it through a live stream service, you're going to use your voice recorder on your phone, you're going to dial into freeconferencecall.com. Anybody here not? Oh, don't be ashamed. Speak up. Getting your thumbnail graphic prepared. Like I said, don't get lost there because you can always change that. But you've got Fiverr and you've got FreeUp. But make sure it is scroll worthy.
When you started out, you showed us those lighting in your house or wherever you were. What were you using for your video recording? Was it a tripod or the camera on top?
When I first got started, I used the camera phone on my iPhone. Just on a selfie stick sitting right in front of me. Awesome. That's what was sitting. You saw the lighting and the material on the wall, but I couldn't angle the picture so that you could also see the selfie stick and the camera and the selfie stick. And then I just hit record, talked, because it was just me talking at first, ended it, sent it to an editor. They cut off the beginning and the end so that you don't see me starting and stopping it. Right. And then I posted it.
So I have a tripod, I got it on Amazon, and it has a remote control Bluetooth. So you can start your video from here, you don't have to reach up to your phone to record it. So it's like $50.
On Amazon, right? Yep. Record and edit your first 3. Make sure you have your description for your podcast, and then a description for your first 3 episodes of your podcast. This is when you launch. And it goes out onto iTunes or Stitcher or Blog Talk Radio, you want to give people enough to come back. If you just put one out there, they say that people will forget you. But I think if your content is so over the top, eventually, because think about it, how many times have you been sitting at your desk and like, oh, that's right, wait a minute, let me see what she's doing now. And you type it in to see what's going on. The thumbnail, set up the account with the hosting company and upload those 3 MP3s. So you set up the account with Libsyn, Blueberry, Buzzsprout, whichever one works best for you, whichever one has the best plan for you. Then from there, once you upload those 3 episodes to the hosting account, then you want to go set up accounts with the actual directories, the iTunes, the Stitcher. You will set up those individual accounts because what you will get from the hosting company is something called an RSS feed. That's the feed. It's like a URL, right? A web address. That's the feed that you will give to the directory so that however you distribute it, it will pull it from the RSS feed and you won't have to upload it to each directory every time. For instance, with my podcast, I have the Blueberry plugin on my website. I set up the blog post on my website with the show notes, the audio file, and I add the RSS feed. Once I set the schedule for when I want it to publish. Once it publishes, the directory checks and picks up the RSS feed. iTunes, for instance, I want to say at least every 15 minutes. Because there have been times where I notice, oops, I spelled something wrong. I go back to correct it, and then wait 10 minutes, go to iTunes, and they've already corrected it. So for me, it's automatic, and I don't have to upload to each one every time. You will find accounts in where the actual hosting, for instance, Blueberry does hosting and Libsyn does hosting. And they will distribute them to each one of the directories for you also. You don't have to have a website. That's totally up to you. There are a number of different routes to get that done. Does everything else collect the RSS feed? Next. Now, you're wondering now that you've gone through that sequence, anybody have a question on the sequence? No? Good. I think good. Okay, now you want to know, show me the money, right? Because it's podcasting for profit. You position yourself, you talk about your expertise, you tell people, you got it? You tell people, ABC, I'm the expert, this is how I get things done. On the actual podcast, you can sell ad time. So if you listen to one of my podcasts, you listen for maybe 13, 14 minutes, and then it'll break into a commercial. You could sell that time on your podcast. Digital products. In my podcast, I put the commercial for my free ebook download. Because I'm not selling that time. What I want is to build my list. So there's somebody's email address that I want. So when they go, they listen to the jingle, they like the commercial and what it says about the ebook, I get their email address. You can do the very same thing with t-shirts, books, digital products. All of that can be sold during your podcast time. Because like I said, the gatekeepers are gone. So now you as an individual have the power to do what the big networks were doing. Drop that commercial in there. Some people do a commercial every 10 minutes. It's exhausting to me as the listener, but so you've got podcast episodes going out, you've got an event coming up in September. All of those commercials can be, even if they are audio testimonials from people that attended the last one. Hey, I attended Women's Expo in March with April and Kim. I had such a great time. It turned into opportunities for me because I got different additional speaking engagements out of it. Maybe something you want to look into if you're looking at starting a business, something of that nature. You can advertise other people's products and get commission. For instance, if I wanted to take my commercial out and put in a commercial for another local DC business, within that, I give them a special link. You've seen those bit.ly links. That's an individual link that you can create and give to different people so you know who pulls in the most business. Whose marketing converts the most, and then pay that person a commission based on the traffic on that link. You can get public speaking engagements. Based on the two examples that I already gave, do you get how you can position yourself to get the public speaking engagements, right? Okay. And then you can also advertise if you do coaching, if you handle workshops, if you have a monthly business luncheon that you want to invite people to. I ran an ad in mine a couple of times to get an in-studio audience, and it worked. I ran it for like a month and a half, and I had like 10 people show up. I was like, oh my goodness, okay, now I gotta get someplace for them to sit. Because I didn't realize the power of my television show. Also goes out locally in the DC area. I didn't realize that many people were watching, because remember, it's a numbers game, and the conversion rate right now is about 1 to 2% depending on what it is you're advertising. So for if you want 10 people, what's that average that you have to put out there? How many people need to see it? To be able to get that 1% conversion, the impressions have to be at least 1,000. Right. It's a numbers game. And I didn't realize that many people were watching my little television show. Right? I mean, it was humbling. It was nice. When they had 10 people walk through the door, I was like, oh my God. Next. Resources on what we've talked about. So if you want to take a picture of this, or you can download the slides later. The recorder, if you wanted to do a video podcast for the Mac, is eCam. If you go to eCam.com, what I used for recording when I do video interviews, I use Skype, and then I use a software called Avaya. Because at that time, Skype didn't do the split screen. So I downloaded Avaya. I think it was like 20 bucks. And it would do the split screen with Skype for me and record it in both the MP4 and the MP3. Emoto does the same thing for the PC. We talked about Free Up and Fiverr. Echo 123 is a test account on Skype so that you can test your sound. It'll call up, well, you call it. There's an automated voice that talks, so you can hear the audio back and forth, and it will test it for you and tell you whether or not it's registering correctly. And that's Echo 123 on Skype. We talked about the podcast hosting, the platforms, Blueberry and Libsyn, Buzzsprout. To create a podcast account on iTunes, you go to podcastconnect.apple.com. And if, I'm sorry?
They are changing, they are pivoting. She asked, is iTunes going away? They are pivoting to a streaming and subscription model, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, they're gonna.
So stay tuned.
Okay, iTunes will go away on Mac with the next upgrade. It will not go away for PC just yet. And then they're gonna split iTunes into 3 different apps. You're gonna get a TV app, a podcast app. I mean, you've noticed, if you have iPhones, you've seen the podcast app in the last upgrade that you got, the little purple icon. So they're splitting it into 3. They haven't told us yet whether or not they're going to make us pay. They're telling us that when we upgrade, all of the music that we bought in iTunes will convert over. Right, exactly.
Stay tuned.
Exactly. Next. If you come up with questions later on, I am on social media at Anita Live. Shoot me your question. If it's a quick question that I can answer, I'd be more than happy to help you. The more women that we have out there, especially in the helping field, the better off we will be. We're losing our children. We're losing our communities. Hurry up, girls. You know, we all need to get it out there. So if you need help creating, trying to figure out who to interview, what guests, what platform to use. Hey, I forgot this from your presentation. Just shoot me a quick question. Oh, and then where I've gotten to now from the launching of my podcast in January of 2017 is I was chosen as UpJourney's personal development expert for 2019. I'm contributing editor, and all of this is from my TV show and my podcast. Contributing editor to a beauty and lifestyle magazine called Taj. I recently won 2 awards for my television show, 2 Telly Awards, a gold and a bronze. She mentioned the books earlier, Family is Not Everything, and 7 Simple Steps to Beat Emotional Baggage. Next. Remember that studio? Okay, now, this is where I record my studio now. But think about it, if I had never gotten started. then I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have even found that resource. But it's a full studio with the crew, audio, technical director. Like, there has to be a person at every spot because there's machinery that goes along with it. There are 3 of those cameras, and then you can see the studio lighting there. You just gotta get started. Next. So, did I ditch the comfort zone?
I love it.
I do have a podcast course. If you wanted to know more about that, you could go to this website. Yeah, you can go to this website to learn more about that course. And if you have any questions, like, again, I'm on social media. Just, you can either tweet it to me, put it in my DMs, whatever, however you're comfortable. I think that's the last slide. Yeah. Oh, if you wanted to download the slides, you can go to thatanitalive.com/slides. And if you did get the VIP ticket, you get the slides, but then you also get the 30-minute call, the strategy session. So if you have any personal questions, or if you get started, get stuck, and then want to do the call, however it works for you, I'm just here to help you. Thank you guys, Jacksonville, for allowing me to come back.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thanks.